an actor who could. So that's where Ed Asner comes in. So I told you he wasn't the first choice 25 years ago when he was first conceiving making this film. And but once Martin Landau was out of the picture, I think it kind of sat on a shelf for a while they reconfigured things. And then this serendipitous connection to Ed Asner playing the part of Samuel is what got that made. Martin Landau, by the way, was Jewish, of course, as well, and an Academy Award winner for his appearance as Bela Lugosi in the movie Ed Wood. Uh, and Bela Lugosi was Jewish. So there's a lot of Jewish connections to all these things, of course. The young woman in the movie is named Margot Josephson, and again, she's young, and there's not much on the that I could find on IMDb.
She's in the movie.
Right? Yeah. Don't know. So, um, but that's her name. She's done some modeling. I know that. You can see, you're sharing that, right, Vanessa? So you can see she's got 3 credits there. But this is by far her biggest role. I think she does a nice job in it. I think seems like a promising young actress to me, but um, I don't know. She may have decided she'd had enough of people saying no. Those things happen, right? But I think she did do a good job. So, sorry? Yeah, she is, and that's what it takes, right? And just does a really good job in the film, I think. And so it's interesting. The movie comes out, and it's become even more timely now than perhaps when the script was first written 25 years ago. I mean, 25 years ago, I don't know. We were already talking about, the Holocaust deniers and all these kinds of things. But of course, as anti-Semitism has been growing and growing over the last few years, it becomes a much more relevant movie in some sense than it did back then. It's also goes to some pretty dark corners, of girl is essentially homeless in Los Angeles for some amount of time before she um, meets meets him for the first time and then meets him again months later, right? So where she's essentially been homeless all that time. So I think the movie does a pretty good job of this stuff. I guess it was probably when it came out, it was overshadowed by movies like what's the one with that won Oscars about a mother-daughter relationship around the same age time period. Well, I'm blanking a little bit, but someone else will probably think of it, make the connection. No, it's just Saoirse Ronan started in it.
Wow. Bye. Oh, lady.
Yeah. Anyhow, um, we start out this movie, of course, with the mother-daughter relationship, which is clearly not a good one, and the mother in so much denial that when this girl comes home and says, asks her about her day at the new school, and she says, "I might try out for cheerleading." The mother acts as if she might actually do that, right? So it shows we can see at a glance how disconnected the mother is from the daughter in this regard. And so the movie really becomes about 2 people reconnecting to life, right? Where both of them are not sure why they're around, frankly, when they meet. And I think this script does a pretty good job of letting those things out sort of bit by bit in a relatively natural way. It doesn't, occasionally it feels a little heavy-handed, but most of the time it feels pretty natural, when when this girl is talking to him about she doesn't believe that the Holocaust happened, that her mother told her, and he says, "Your mom is wrong. I was almost one of the 6 million," right? It feels pretty natural, and I do love some of the sort of dry humor that shows up here and there. This is this you've never spoken to a Jew before. Well, this is a red letter day for you, he says. You know, so I think the movie does a good job of letting him be that kind of gruff Ed Asner character that we're sort of used to, going all the way back to Lou Grant. I mean, we should say something about Ed Asner. I mean, a Jewish actor, been around, got his start on television back in the 1950s, and was a stage actor as well. I mean, he appeared on Broadway with Jack Lemmon in a play in 1960, I think. He has a distinction of being one of only a couple of people who have ever won an Emmy for the same character in both the category of comedy and the category of drama. His character of Lou Grant, when he was Mary Tyler Moore's boss on the Mary Tyler Moore show, he won several Oscars, not Oscars, Emmys for appearing as Lou Grant in a comedy. And then after that show ended, the character Lou Grant got his own show, and this was nominated in the drama category. Though there were some humorous elements in the Lou Grant show as well, but it was clearly not a situation comedy like the Mary Tyler Moore show. And he won 2 more Emmys playing Lou Grant in a drama. So he's actually won more Emmys, I think, than any male actor in history. And there's only one other person who has won an Emmy for the same character in both drama and comedy. It's much more recently an actress named Uzo Aduba. She was in Orange is the New Black, and I think that's the character that was nominated one year as a comedy and one year as a drama. So she won both times. So so he's in some pretty rare company there, and has many other awards and credits to his name, certainly. And not the least of them is that movie Up, in which he plays the curmudgeonly old man who ends up taking care of a young boy. So in some ways, the plot has some parallels to this one. So it's a pretty powerful performance, I think. He does a good job. I think he does a very credible job with the accent. I mean, I'm sure there are probably some people. It's hard to get used to him speaking with the accent, right? Because we're so used to seeing him in a different role that I think it takes a little while. But I actually think he's doing a really good job with it. So, and the idea. So why did I pair this one with what we saw last week, right? So there's a couple of things involved there. There's a couple that are pretty obvious, I think, and the most obvious is two aging lions in a movie, right? We got to watch last week, fantastic actor doing his thing in that movie. And this week we get to watch Ed Asner doing his thing. And so that comparison is there. But also as One Life that we watched last week was about someone saving other lives. I mean, this is also about someone saving other lives. They're both related to the Holocaust in certain ways. I'd say arguably neither one of these movies is a Holocaust film. It's sort of last week's a little bit as a technicality, right? World War II doesn't start until 3/4 of the way or more into that movie last week, One Life. Those kids are not technically Holocaust survivors that are being saved. They are refugees, and there is a difference there. So in that sense, the movie doesn't show much of what we come to think of as the Holocaust. It takes place in sort of the run up to it. And of course, this movie, though its main character is a Holocaust survivor, it's not. It too shows very little of the actual events of the Holocaust. I think more in sound than anything that you see on screen. There's a couple of places where uh, and this, by the way, one of the very first movies we watched in the series years ago now, you may think back to The Pawnbroker and the pawnbroker's use of sound and image. It was also the story of a Holocaust survivor who was not sure where he fit into the world and was having difficulty with the idea of living once he survived the Holocaust. So, um, and it did some of the same things with sound that you would have an image that doesn't match the sound that the character is hearing kind of in his own head. So that there are these moments when the memories intrude. And I think it was a fantastic technique in The Pawnbroker, and it was really the movie was kind of built around it. In this movie, it's much more fleeting, but it still retains a lot of power, I think. It's a way of showing us what a survivor goes through, right? How trauma is revisited in sound and sights, and things trigger these memories. And so I think the movie does a good job of showing us that as well. So um, there's also an interesting technique here using the drawings, the girls' drawings, or which again, reading some interviews online that I tracked down in a think it was out of a Wikipedia article. I was able to track down a couple of articles about the director, and that wasn't in the original script, but there was someone working on scenes in the movie, someone who was on the production crew who was drawing and doodling on set in between responsibilities, and he saw what she was doing and said, "Can you do those for the movie?" And so added that aspect of this girl is not just a dead end kid. She's she's got a talent. And then the movie uses that very evocatively in drawing the pictures, which gradually, I don't know if you noticed, they go from black and white to color as the movie goes on. Right? And I think that's a pretty clever device that the film uses. And goes, of course, from being very, very dark and foreboding kinds of drawings to the beauty of the tiger towards the end of the movie, the beauty and majesty, if you like, the tiger. So, um, so what did you guys think? Any reactions to the film? No online here. Okay, I'm going to give microphones to folks here. Yeah.
To address what you were just saying about the drawings, even the
Get close to that so they can hear you at home. I don't know. I'm not sure. It doesn't sound like it's on. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Vanessa and I were talking about this before you walked in, even how the film ended with the drawing
Yes.
of her, the father, sitting with her family, her father in the middle.
Yeah.
And then her boyfriend is off to the side.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting, how they started with the drawing and then they ended with the drawing at the end of the movie.
Right. Yeah, I like that too. I mean, I think that a lot of movies might go for the let's sort of clip on this last scene where she goes and has a birthday party with her father and stepmother, I guess. She's had no relationship with her at all, and any interaction has always been negative. But so rather than try and make us believe that that's possible, we have a kind of a make believe it's possible, right? And so there is a little bit of a happy conclusion there, right? That she has found a reason to live and that she's not completely alone in the world anymore. maybe. So,
Thank you, Ruby, it was wonderful. I speak for Steve and I, we both enjoyed it a great deal. And we both came up with the same conclusion after the movie was over. You wanna say?
get close to
Sorry, we both came up with the same conclusion
Uh-huh.
at the end, that, they both had needed each other to come out of their,
Their malaise.
you know, they were just so, you know, they were into themselves. They couldn't reach out to anybody.
right.
And so each one of them found between the two of them, they came out.
Yeah.
I mean, Eddie Iver's, character, he said, because she said, why did you pick me? And he said, I remember this, that he walked out of the cemetery and then he stopped. And he
Right.
said, God told me to go back and find a reason for living. And he
Yeah.
went back and that was his reason for living.
Right.
And then she, at the end, if you notice, she's got her arm, she's holding him up.
Right.
And she was taking care of him in his apartment.
Yeah.
So they each needed each other at the end.
Absolutely. And I think, let's go to the title, Tiger Within, and think about that for a minute, that both of them have to find their tiger within, right? It's not just, he explains the concept to her, but it's not that he knows the concept, right? I mean, he's not embraced that, just the opposite. And he's been going through the motions of life, right? But not actually living. And I think there's a line where he talks about being afraid of her, right? He sees a swastika, right? Which we know as viewers, she didn't decide to put on her jacket. I mean, somebody did it to her jacket, but it's there, and she thinks it's cool. Of course, that's what she was told by the person who put it there. It means you're cool, which is pretty terrifying to us who live in a world with anti-Semites, that there are people out there who just think it's cool, So, but at any rate, seeing that, his first reaction is to walk away and to walk away quickly, right? And then we see him outside the cemetery make the determination to go back in, and listening to his deceased wife's voice, which tells him to face that fear. And so I think that's part of his finding the tiger within him too. So definitely something that the characters are parallel, right? Do that. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Okay, thanks. Anybody at home, you got a thought about the movie? Did you like it? What did you see?
Yeah.
Well, I see Elaine ready to talk.
Elaine.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, so I have a question about the cemetery scene. I thought his wife and children died in Germany in the Holocaust, but he keeps going to this one gravesite.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that was about.
Right. So I think his children died in the Holocaust, and there's a vague reference about it because they were twins. So those of us who know things, automatically start thinking about Joseph Mengele and the twin stuff, the hideous stuff that he did. So the movie doesn't go into detail about that. But his wife, I think, was also a survivor and came to the United States with him, and then died here. So that's actually her stone that he's going to. And of course, again, without really making a big deal out of it, we see him bring a stone when he goes to visit her. I mean, so there's Jewish tradition that is preserved in the movie without really calling attention to itself, which I always appreciate in movies like this. Let people do a little work if they have to understand why he is bringing stones there. But I also think that after, Schindler's List came out, a lot of people knew why people bring stones, right? It became a part of, common knowledge, maybe. So I'm sort of glad the movie doesn't have to teach it, right? Just do it. People will figure it out, and people understand cross-culturally when there's a sign of respect or whatever it is. So my understanding is that the wife survived, and that's her stone.
Okay.
I thought you were going to ask me where the cemetery is, which I meant to look up and I forgot. There's a
Oh.
synagogue that shows up later in the movie. I did look that one up. That's in it's in Los Angeles, actually, Sinai Temple. It's a modern conservative congregation. And they allowed some filming there, including even putting a swastika on the wall as long as it could be washed off, right? Was allowed by the synagogue for the purposes of the movie making. So, and
Huh.
at such a low budget, they must have gotten a good deal from the synagogue to spend a day there. Yeah, Susan?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I can't let anybody see me because I have a bruised face.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But well, it'll get better. But at any rate, I really liked this movie. And the thing that I liked most about it was how they learned from each other and how they tolerated one another's differences. She had to learn more than he did because he was her teacher. But it really warmed my heart. And I mean, there was a lot of tragedy in the movie as well as humor, but I thought that we everybody could learn a lesson from the two of them.
Yeah. Thanks, Susan. Yeah, I like that about the movie as well. And of course um Ed Asner's character talks about how he didn't have a chance to be a father. And so there's something about that for him too, that he's getting a chance to do something that the Holocaust robbed him of, in a sense. And so I think that's a really interesting aspect of this too. Right? But yeah, they learn from each other. They need each other. So, and yet the movie doesn't do this by being like a typical tearjerker kind of movie, So, she's essentially, she's working in massage parlors, and when he dies, she's nearly reduced to going back to that. So that it's not a sentimental movie, right? I think, and I think that's to its credit, that it's easy to wallow in sentiment when making a movie like this, and much harder to have it have a hard edge while at the same time having these characters who learn from each other, right? So I love that.
I thought that this movie was fantastic, and I agree with the comments that have been made. But maybe this is a stretch. I thought it was terrific, showing, at least on my account, the juxtaposition of these two helping each other as opposed to what's going on now with the Epstein files of taking advantage of young women, and that both the man, Ed Asner, and the young girl did learn from each other. And it wasn't perfect, but I think the changes that happened were very subtle and very well done.
Yeah. Thanks for making that comparison. It's a point we shouldn't ignore, right? It is, again, it's a good example of the movie not being sort of sentimental and treacly, right? She assumes that there will be a price to pay for his being helpful to her, right? And so one of the things that she needs to learn, but it's a tough lesson, and I think it's a tough lesson for a young woman, especially when he says a present is something you give without expecting something in return. And that's what you should understand. That's what a present is, but I think too many people don't have that experience in their lives, right? I think it's not just her. Uh, there are expectations, right? That come with a man's help, you know? So I think the movie again does a good job saying, she may not, we don't have evidence that in her childhood that she was abused or, physically or sexually abused. Nevertheless, she is emotionally stunted and perhaps emotionally abused, And so these things have consequences and they're hard to get through. And we see statistics about young women that are shocking when it comes to, how often they've been abused in one way or another. Um, so I think that's, she's not, um, she's not just she's a real character, right? She's not just a device in the plot, right? To let us um, see the experience of a Holocaust survivor, right? It's much more than that. So, what else?
What about Ed Asner fighting the thugs? I
Mhm.
mean, you know what's gonna happen.
Right.
And like if that was my grandfather, or frankly, my husband,
Yeah.
I'd be like, what are you thinking about?
Mhm.
There's three of them, you're old, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and obviously, how ironic is it, right? A guy who survives the Holocaust and then is killed by neo-Nazis, on bright street in daylight in Los Angeles. So, by the way, it was not necessarily the filmmaker's choice to make it a bright street in Los Angeles. That's a budget question. It's a lot more expensive to film at night. No, you need lights and all kinds of things. A whole lot more crew is necessary. So I think he didn't start out with the idea that this was going to happen in broad daylight, and then sort of hit on something that makes it even worse, right? That this isn't some dark corner of Los Angeles. It's not an alleyway, right? It's in daylight, and where's the security guard? I mean, he's shouting for the security guard, but it's maybe one difference. If they'd made the movie a couple of years later, this is like, you see movies all the time where it's, well, in that situation, I would just get out my cell phone and call somebody. But right, the movie's set in a place where that's not optional, right? So he doesn't have a cell phone to call 911. And nowadays synagogue security is tighter than it was just a couple of years ago. Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say, that, the first thing I thought of was, where is the security guard? Because it's all obvious that this movie was written 25 years ago. 25 years ago, we didn't have security guards
Right.
in synagogues. And he walked in, he's the only one in the whole sanctuary.
Yeah.
There's nobody around, and I found that very unusual. And she's screaming for somebody, he's screaming for somebody. But that's the writer, that's what they.
Yeah. Well, and it is, in that sense, you may be right. I mean, this is one artifact of the fact that the movie's script took so long to develop and become a movie, right? It was not so unusual 25 years ago for someone to come in. We had members often who would come in and just sit down in the sanctuary for a little while, Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The security is all very new,
Hmm.
and, so that's was
Yeah.
one of the obvious things about when it was written.
Right, right.
Blatant error.
And I would think that the addition of him in that scene yelling for security is actually a concession to, when they actually made this movie in 2021, we were already starting to have security. It's been a change over time, right? Even the thing that really the real moment that I think we had security all the time, I think was the Tree of Life shooting. So in Pittsburgh,
Security.
armed security, right, all the time, whenever anybody's in the building. We had some security before that, but it was more like for some events, you know.
It's the kids not to go.
That's right. That's right. We had security guards. I forgot about that. But yeah, we used to have security on Saturday morning at the B'nai Mitzvah because we were worried about the kids hurting each other or hurting themselves or hurting the building during those days. It feels like innocent times now. So I forgot about that because, you know, we had a kid one time run into remember that the defibrillator, which was mounted on the wall, and a kid ran into it and yeah, bloody, the whole thing. And so we got to have security, I mean, who's going to take care of that? You?
That day.
Yeah, it probably was you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I also grew up in South Florida,
Mhm.
and my father was very involved in the Jewish community. And I remember we used to get hate calls and, people, I mean, not only in South Florida, I also lived in Atlanta.
Mhm.
And we had people, guards outside of our house because we had people of color coming in. And they only came in at night, so we couldn't see them. But I do remember being very scared because I thought, the Ku Klux Klan would call our house, that they were gonna come in and burn a cross.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly the same. I don't remember the synagogue. Do you remember the conservative synagogue on the beach, the big one?
Temple Emmanuel, I think, wasn't it on Washington Avenue near Lincoln Road? Yeah.
It's just all depended. It wasn't as prevalent certainly as now.
Right. Yeah, the last time I visited Temple Emmanuel on Miami Beach, it was to hear a Buddhist monk speak, actually. It's not that long ago, but the building is still there, but it's not actually a functioning synagogue anymore. Sure. So there are a number of moments in the movie that I think we could point to and said that we, what we like about them. But it's really just, it's sort of cumulative. It's the language, which again, this one's a little rougher in terms of I think it's rated R. The language is a little rougher sometimes in this movie than some of the others of that we've seen. And I think that there's, I think that again, the movie is using that to its credit to keep it from becoming kind of schmaltzy and so
It's not.
treacly, yeah,
Not.
yeah. So I love, but I do love this scene where they're sitting, I think, at the table in the apartment, and he tells her that the reason he's doing this is because of a promise I made to my wife to stop hating. And she says, do you hate everybody? And he says, everyone but her. And the difficulty of opening up his heart again. It's a very powerful thing. So, and of course, because he's beaten by these folks, we get to see her run to the hospital and talk to him and things like that. And there's little scenes that I just, they don't necessarily drive the plot, but they drive the character, and I like those scenes. And so one of the scenes at school where they're seems to be an art class going on. They're discussing the work of the photographer Diane Arbus, right? It doesn't really drive the plot, doesn't move us, closer to what's going to happen. But it just, she has this, she talks about Diane Arbus and the difficulty, the difficulty of accepting yourself, right? I mean, I don't think I have the exact dialogue there, but it's, why did she commit suicide? It says God could only understand her when she was dead. You know, that that there was something about her that only God could see. Right? It's a pretty powerful thing. I love that. I love that little scene.
Yeah.
It's a
I have
good
another
teacher,
comment.
too.
I,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Elaine is waving her hand there. Elaine?
Yeah. I'm curious about the relationship. This young boy has an interest in her, and
Mhm.
she doesn't seem to be as interested in him as he would like. I think she doesn't want to open up herself to him either.
Right.
I don't know. Do you have any comments about
I
that?
do. Just imagine that relationship for a second, right? We don't know much about him, but he's just a normal kid, right? She's not just a normal kid. I mean, she's already had some pretty strange and difficult life experience, right? I mean, at what point do you tell a high school boyfriend that you were working in sex traffic?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so it's hard to imagine that that's, I'm, she's already wounded from her experience from multiple other schools, as far as we know, right? That none of them had worked for her. And so her ability to open up and tell him anything it's going to take a while. He's going to have to be persistent. And to his credit, he's pretty persistent for a teenage boy. It's a pretty positive portrayal of a teenage boy, although he does get to say here and there that he's done some things that he regrets, but doesn't want to repeat that mistake with her. Um, and they have a couple of good, and again, not too syrupy, treacly kinds of scenes where they're sitting on the beach and talking. Um, you know, so
think that thing does move the plot forward
Mm.
is as the movie goes on, she wears less makeup,
mhm.
her clothing changes, her hairdo changes,
Yeah.
and you can kind of see her evening out,
Right.
I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. So there's a line that the boyfriend says about her, she's weird and she's cute. And that's good. And that's good, right? Yeah.
Didn't say that have a chance to teach his granddaughters later how to be a lady.
Right. He didn't have a chance to teach his children how to be a lady.
Trying to grow.
Right. Absolutely. So, so it's, there's a lot of these moments and, um, then, when she goes out with the boy and stuff and things like that. But really, I keep coming back to the scenes of her with Ed Asner, with Samuel, right? They have this conversation about war. I think that there have been lots of wars. Men are wars are done by men, generated by greed. And how wrong it is and how evil. Which, by the way, I mean, there are parts of this character that I think are pretty close to Ed Asner, and I think that's one of them. I mean, he was very much a peace activist, and was a part of the Democratic Socialists, at least at some point in his life. I mean, he was very outspoken politically as an actor. So Um, but there are lines in the movie that I think are actually poetic, that she and the boy have a conversation about dying. And, would you rather die this way or that way? And he says, I'd like to be kissing you so long I run out of breath and I die. There's some poetry in that. I think it's very sweet. Yeah. Yeah. So how are we doing? Last thoughts? Any last thoughts on this one? I'm getting thumbs up here. I hope you guys liked it as well. I have to think about that for a minute. Let's see. It's not Rose. That's the last one. It's called Between Two Temples. With Carol Kane. Another pretty small independent film from I think just last year. So you should be able to find it on Amazon easily enough and get a chance to watch it. Between the Temples, not between two temples. Right. So that makes it a pun, Between the Temples. So, okay. So I hope you like it and we'll talk about it next time. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks for coming.